Hello, happy Saturday. Welcome to human intelligence versus artificial intelligence as it relates to ransomware. I hope you're enjoying CactusCon 2022 thus far, and I really appreciate you taking the time to join my presentation today. Let's get started with the agenda. So I'm going to start with a quick introduction, who I am, why I'm in front of you, and why I do this. And am involved with ransomware negotiations and cyber threat intelligence. I'm going to get a little bit into the conversation about artificial intelligence versus human intelligence, but really expand that into our understanding of artificial intelligence and human intelligence, how they both can disrupt ransomware attacks. I want to get into the ransomware incident cycle, discuss a little bit about the individual phases, relevant phases of the ransomware incident life cycle as it pertains to this conversation of artificial intelligence and human intelligence. And then really dive in the meat of the conversation on negotiations, how they work, why human intelligence is important in those discussions, and the different ways that humans are involved, and the beneficial sides of having a professional negotiator, experienced negotiator at the table as victims are having these conversations related to ransomware. So again, thanks for joining today. My name is Bryce Webster-Jacobsen. I'm the Director of Intelligence Operations at GroupSense, a cyber threat intelligence company based out of Arlington, Virginia. My background is actually in psychology, sociology, and transnational threats. I was long interested in the role of non-state actors as it pertains to national security, but also more broadly diplomacy and international relations. I've been really interested since the early days of my education in why groups form, how groups form, motivations of groups, and the roles that individuals play in those larger organizations and groups. Prior to working in cyber threat intelligence, I actually worked in higher education, in international higher education. So I've transitioned slowly from education and working in roles in international higher education into cyber threat intelligence. And there's a lot of overlap between those two industries. I'm happy to answer questions about that later and my transition into my current role. But we're very fortunate to be given a chance at GroupSense to lead our Managed Security Intelligence Center and work with our research team and our analyst team to finish cyber threat intelligence deliverables for our clients. At GroupSense, in addition to leading our Managed Security Intelligence Center, I am also one of our lead negotiators. I've taken on many ransomware negotiation cases, worked with victims ranging from small family businesses of less than 10 employees to big multinational corporations. Had initial ransom demands in the tens of thousands up to tens of millions. So happy to talk again during the Q&A process about the range of initial demands that we've seen, but also kind of the range of victims and different negotiations that I've worked on. And I will be peppering in some of those stories throughout the conversation today. All right, so let's get started with the short conversation about the intersections between artificial intelligence and human intelligence. I think there's often the conversation about artificial intelligence versus human intelligence and why one is better than the other, but they really both play a role in effective cyber threat intelligence. And really, as we think more specifically in addressing ransomware, both the attacks and the prevention of attacks, the recovery from an attack and the prevention of attack. Each artificial intelligence and human intelligence have their own pros and cons at various phases of the attack lifecycle and in the prevention of an attack. So I'll try to get into a little bit of that here as we talk. Human and artificial intelligence is the most powerful combination to combat ransomware. You can combine the automated threat detection and mitigation with with smart, effective humans who are there to bookend each end of the intelligence life cycle. So it's been proven that AI has a very important role in mitigating threats or detecting threats on a network, potential indicators of compromise, or the command and control servers that are being pinged off of a network, or suspicious amounts of traffic. That can be done much quicker through artificial intelligence than maybe a human could. But there's still an important role that humans play in feeding the automated tools and training and tuning the automated tools, but also evaluating the information and the effectiveness of those tools. And one reason, particularly as we talk about ransomware, that it's important to use both human and artificial intelligence, is that human behavior plays an important role on both ends of the ransomware attack. And what I mean by both ends of the ransomware attack, both the individual conducting a ransomware attack, a cyber threat actor who is part of a ransomware operation. Maybe it's a cyber threat actor that has purchased a ransomware kit and is operating kind of this low dollar, low sophistication malware kit that they're able to hit a few targets with and make a few dollars. But also, if we think about some of the most common entry vectors for ransomware attacks being phishing campaigns and credential reuse, and these are behaviors that unfortunately humans within our organization have a role in allowing to happen. So if that's somebody who's more susceptible to social engineering, or somebody who hasn't maybe followed their phishing training, we can't completely separate humans from ransomware attacks. So I wanted to dive into the life cycle of a ransomware incident a little bit. So this is a really great infographic from New Zealand CERT. And so I've credited them down below, but I'll also throw the link to this. They have a longer form blog piece on this infographic. I'll throw that link in the Discord chat. But we start with initial access, and you can see a few different types of initial access here, and the flow through. So obviously there's phishing campaigns and password guessing or credential reuse. Those are some of the more commonly understood entry vectors for a ransomware attack. But I want to point your attention to exploit vulnerabilities, the third circle on the left side, third circle down on the left side. So oftentimes what we see in dark web marketplaces is threat actors who are selling access to a company, whether that be admin access or standard user access to a certain system, where they've either gain that access using stolen credentials, or they've exploited a vulnerability. And then that initial access is purchased by a ransomware operator, or given to a ransomware operator for that ransomware operator to then conduct a ransomware attack against a business. So I want you to hold on to the thought about initial access, because it'll come up in a little bit. And then I want to move to the end of the other side of this infographic, the impact on the target: data exfiltration, destroying backups, and encrypting data. Those are often kind of the end goal, or what we see. Some combination of those three activities is what we see ransomware operators do. So human intelligence plays a role on both ends of this life cycle, but it's impossible to ignore the benefits of artificial intelligence in detecting some of the activities in the middle of the chart that we're seeing here, the consolidation and preparation phases. So detecting lateral movement, detecting privilege escalation, detecting the command and control servers that are used by those groups. So again, this is not supposed to be an argument on artificial intelligence versus human intelligence, rather focusing on the role that human intelligence plays in this in the entire life cycle of a ransomware incident. What this chart doesn't cover is what happens after data exfiltration, backups are destroyed, and encrypted data. Once the ransomware operator drops the ransom note on the victim's network, what happens next? Often that's when somebody like myself or other ransomware negotiators will get pulled into the conversations with the stakeholders at the victim site to figure out what are the options. What would be the best course of action to recover that data or decrypt that data and prevent the release of any data that was exfiltrated. And that's one element, and often kind of the biggest element of the ransomware incident lifecycle that is most difficult to automate. So we'll talk about a few strategies for that in a minute. But I want to talk about initial access, the benefits of artificial intelligence and human intelligence in addressing this phase of a ransomware attack. It is possible using AI to automate detection of dark web offers that could be affecting your organization or organizations that you're responsible for, whether that be keyword searches, whether that be detections of automated detection of POCs available on the dark web related to specific exploits that you may or may not be vulnerable to. There are a few different ways that you can use artificial intelligence to detect those offers on the dark web and then be alerted to them and within your environment and go through a process of either remediating that access or checking to see if it's a part of, or if it's actually, relevant to your network. There are even some ways that when cyber threat actors are trying to conceal the victim that they are offering initial access to, maybe they don't want to name the victim, maybe they're not going to say, I have access to Walmart and I'm not using Walmart in any particular reason, just for a large organization, I keep in mind. They may say, I have access to a large national retail big box store worth X number of billions of dollars, headquartered in Arkansas. And often they're using descriptions and revenue figures or employee counts to describe the scope of the victim, the scale of the victim that they have to entice a buyer to purchase that initial access. They're using tools that are common business intelligence tools that that you or I or our sales teams may have access to when they're reaching out to prospective customers. And there are ways that you can even use artificial intelligence to automate some elements of investigating those more concealed initial offers, comparing data points on like Zoom info for example, with the data points that are offered by a threat actor. And I've seen some pretty sophisticated tools and individuals who are doing that. But you still need the human element to actually engage with those offers, engage with the threat actors that are offering those that access to determine that you are narrowing down the initial access to the right victim and that it is representing your company. And that the ability to engage with a threat actor is pretty difficult. It requires a solid set of skills in understanding the language that the threat actors are using, both whether that be Russian language, but also some of the slang that is used commonly on the forums. It involves having accounts that have a reputation that would not be suspicious to the threat actor. It also is necessary to vet the access that the threat actor claims they have. It's not uncommon for threat actors to scam other potential threat actors and claim they have access to a network that they don't truly have access to, or to claim they have a data set that is publicly available or something like this. So it does take, again, at the other end of that conversation, some human intelligence to be able to vet the claims that the threat actor is making, but also to convince a threat actor to engage with you. So there is that human element in assessing the initial access as well. So let's move on to ransom negotiations, the meat of the conversation. So again, we've talked a little bit about the first phase of the ransomware incident lifecycle, the initial access. If you recall the diagram of the ransomware incident lifecycle that I shared earlier from New Zealand CERT, was three outcomes of a ransomware attack: data exfiltration, encryption of data, and destruction of backups. Ransomware groups or the ransomware operator will then drop a note on the victim's network, and that spins up obviously a massive incident response effort that can involve CISOs, director of IT, CEOs, boards, outside counsel, privacy lawyers, insurance companies, incident response folks. There can be many individuals involved in each process of it. And we have specialized roles and specialized individuals that come out and help with their individual area of responsibility in responding to a ransomware incident. The same goes for the conducting the actual negotiation itself. And this is really where human outshines artificial intelligence. Now, again, I'm not saying there's no role for artificial intelligence in the actual conducting of negotiations or developing a strategy around negotiations, but the primary focus should be on bringing in outside experts to lead that negotiation and advise on negotiations, and to assist the victim with achieving the best outcomes that they possibly can through this difficult incident. So the benefits of human in a ransom negotiation are varied, and there are numerous benefits, but it really depends on the specific negotiation, the specific circumstances around a negotiation. No two negotiations have been the same in the dozens and dozens that I've worked on. Even when negotiating with the same ransom group that I've negotiated with in the past, the circumstances change. And those circumstances or variables are everything from the size of the organization that you're representing. So again, as I mentioned before, I've represented very small companies, very small family businesses, to large multinational organizations. Another major variable is insurance coverage. If the victim has insurance, cyber threat insurance or cyber incident insurance, that is often one pool of money that can be used to pay a ransom. The disposition of the ransomware group, you catch somebody on a bad day, and we'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later. But so each ransom negotiation does have its own set of variables that need to be considered when creating the strategy and moving through the actual negotiation itself. Unfortunately, one misconception that we run into all the time when onboarding victims for ransomware negotiation is a misconception about how long a negotiation actually will take. It's not like the movies, it's not like some simulations we've seen, where it's going to be settled in 24 to 48 hours. Oftentimes, when we're working with all of the different stakeholders that need to be involved in a complex negotiation, we aren't even able to engage with the ransomware group until 48 hours, 72 hours sometimes after the initial detection of the incident. And that's because, a lawyer's got to come in, or the CEO's got to come in, or we're investigating who's actually behind it. The incident response folks are trying to quickly assess the damage associated with the attack. So it can be many days before you even start the negotiation. We often see our negotiations conclude within 7 to 14 days. So this can be an extended incident. And so it requires a set of individuals that are willing to adjust the strategy on the fly and assess at each moment what would be the best next step forward to achieve the desired outcomes. That's often what I spend most of my time doing over those 2 weeks, is actually reevaluating outcomes or reevaluating new information and reassessing desired outcomes with the victims. So Um, Again, some of the benefits of human intelligence in ransomware negotiations is that familiarity with ransom groups. Ransomware groups are evolving, splitting. They're splitting. They are maybe they're rebranding, and so being able to keep keep a mental Rolodex of the different ransomware groups and the motivations that they may have as you're negotiating with them is super important. Again, we've negotiated dozens and dozens of cases as a firm. I've even been in the position of negotiating with the same group on behalf of two different victims at the same time. And so having that familiarity with understanding the next step that this ransom group is likely to take is invaluable to the process. Understanding the structures of the organizations, as I mentioned before, one of the reasons that I got into this is a familiarity with and a desire to study non-state groups. Some of these ransomware operators, particularly the more sophisticated ones, run like a business, operate like a business. And so having the ability to understand the structure of the group that you're working with and communicate that back to the victim can inform can lead to a more informed, well-informed strategy when conducting the negotiation. As I mentioned before, understanding and refining the negotiation principles and strategy throughout the negotiation is absolutely necessary to achieving a successful outcome. So we at GroupSense, we've worked with members from the Harvard negotiation program and had some interactions with FBI negotiators on some of our ransom cases, and try to leverage some of the best practices and negotiation principles from other cases, but have evolved them to the context of cyber incidents. We have negotiated with initial access brokers, so we do have some experience, some rich experience communicating with cyber threat actors, and that has carried over well to our ability to conduct ransom negotiations on behalf of victims. But it's also important to evolve, as I mentioned before, to refine and evolve the strategy throughout the complex negotiation. A victim's motivations may change throughout the negotiation, and that may change because of some sort of external pressure from clients. It may change because of a win by the IR folks working on the incident that have been able to actually recover or restore vast majority of the data from backups. It may be a change in heart on willingness to pay a ransom. We've worked with victims that from the first call said, no way, not going to pay these guys $1. We still want to engage with them to try to understand what they have, assess what type of data they would be willing to release. And then as it gets closer to the actual kind of countdown clock that the negotiator or the ransom operator has put on the incident, there may be a change of heart from leadership or the key stakeholders at the organization, as they realize, there's not another, in this circumstance, there's no other path forward without sending some sort of payment to the ransomware operators, unfortunately. So being able to understand and refine the strategy throughout the life cycle of the incident is absolutely necessary. There's also a lot of human intelligence that goes into evaluating the risks associated with the potential outcomes of the negotiation. So if there is a negotiation that's going to break down, that started successfully but eventually breaks down, and the ransomware operator and the victim are not able to find a shared desirable price, then that can have a different outcome than if a ransomware victim, and potentially more negative outcome if the ransomware victim just didn't engage with the threat actor at all. We've had experiences where ransomware victims have chosen to walk away from the table, and the ransomware operator, for lack of a better term, gets really pissed because they thought they were going to have a payday, and now they're not going to receive any payment. And so their reaction, their next step, the ransomware operator's next step, could be more severe than if we had just not engaged. There are other times where it may be necessary to pay some amount of money to prevent the data that was exfiltrated from being released or publicized, but it's not worth paying any money for the decryption key that the threat actors are also offering. So being able to understand the different outcomes that the different outcomes of the negotiation and clearly communicate those to the victim and help them evaluate their options, and still be able to clearly understand the motivations of the threat actors and get them to agree to the desired outcome of the victim takes a delicate balance and a special set of skills. And lastly, as we've discussed before, humans conduct ransomware attacks. Humans more effectively respond to ransomware attacks. We've spent many days, nights, weekends with communicating with victims, and we've even spent many days, nights, weekends talking to ransomware operators as we're conducting these negotiations. And there are times where you start to break through both the virtual communication barriers, but you start to break through the difficulties of the negotiation and see the human side of the ransomware operators. And this is not an appeal to the sympathies of the ransomware operators. They are criminal elements. I'm happy to see at any time that there's law enforcement action against these groups, but sometimes you have to convince them that you are a person, that you are representing a business that has been severely affected, and appeal to the sympathies of that ransomware operator. And sometimes you can see them trying to get you to do the same thing, to understand your perspective. And that's always the most difficult element of these ransomware negotiations to navigate. And so having somebody who can effectively navigate that on your side when a ransomware incident happens is extremely beneficial. One of the last things I want to do is show you just one example of a ransomware negotiation, how it's conducted. This is one of the victims that we worked on. And I like this because it shows a few different things. One, this demonstrates some of the sophistication of the ransomware operators that we're working with. They set up chat windows on Tor, individual links, onion links for each victim that has instructions on what to do next when you find the ransomware note, a short about us section, but also this integrated chat feature, which allows you to chat in real time with the ransomware operators as if you were sending a direct message or a Facebook message or a support message to another provider. What's not shown here is the top of the screen, which included the countdown timer on the until the whatever threat the ransomware operators were making would happen, and the price, the actual amount that they were requesting. And so it's a pretty unique feature that threat actors have, and shows how sophisticated some of these organizations can be. If you look at the actual negotiation, so the blue window is us, the victim, and in this case, we were not representing ourselves as negotiators; we were representing ourselves as the victim. The green window on the left would be the threat actors, and in this case, we were trying to appeal to the humanity of the threat actors. We were, this was a small organization. The ransom demand, I believe, was roughly 10 times the amount that we had originally asked for, or we were proposing down there, the 21,946. This was a small family business, and that did not have cyber insurance, and so we were appealing to the sympathies of the threat actors. Trying to use factual information. This was an organization that billed monthly, but wasn't able to do any of their accounting or billing because of the ransomware attack, and so they were not able to bring in any additional funds. We did talk about notifying notifying law enforcement, and that there were potential lawsuits coming down the pipeline for this victim. So, it is a delicate conversation, and there are times where you have to treat these negotiations like a business discussion, and many of the ransomware operators do. But there are other times where you have to appeal to the human side and say, hey, we're a small business, and it doesn't always work, right? And having the understanding of the different threat actors will allow us to try to best craft that strategy on behalf of the victim. But there is a side where you're conducting this like a normal business transaction, and the other side of it is where you're appealing on behalf of the victim to the sympathies of the threat actor and trying to effectively manage that relationship. So appreciate you taking the time to listen to my chat. A little bit about the role of human intelligence and artificial intelligence in addressing ransomware issues. Would be glad to answer any further questions that you have, provide further information in the Discord channel. And again, happy Saturday. Hope you enjoy the rest of your CactusCon. Thank you.